Mythology is the story of the archetypal relationships within the human psyche. Science is the story of the relationship of objects. It's important to understand that science cannot explain why something happens. What science can do is observe correlation. And so when we observe that blood is always moving through the vein, we can then observe a correlation where as the blood moves, the heart moves. As the heart moves, the blood moves. So there's a relationship. When we see that the hand moves, and as the hand moves, air moves, we can see there's a relationship between the hand moving and the air moving. And we can see there's a relationship between air moving and a sensation of cooling. And we can see there's a correlation between the word cooling, the symbol of that, which is language, and the movement. So we can move in and out of symbol. Language is audio sounds that correlate with certain observable phenomena. And we can see that there's a moving dynamic that relates, meaning it is unquestionable that as the hand moves, it sets into motion a correlation with a number of other things that we can observe. We can observe by first labeling and then noticing repeated correlation. What's happening? But it does not explain why. It's a very useful narrative to be able to say that when this happens, the heart speeds up and blood moves in a certain way through these veins. And that when that happens, this tends to happen. And when this happens, this always happens, meaning there's never been a time that we've measured where that hasn't happened when this happened. And then there's these other areas where 80% of the time that this happens. And there's a reason, meaning when the 20% of the time it doesn't happen, we can see that's because this happened. But we put in that because the relationships are so strong. It does not actually explain why. It's just a complex set of physical phenomena that are observed. And because we notice that every time this happens, the heart speeds up, it's useful to think of it as causative. If I want my heart to speed up, and every time I do this, my heart speeds up, it's useful to say that that is a predictable lead-in to the heart speeding up. If I want my heart to speed up, do this, or do this, or do this. Move the blood. And it's a theory or a story because the correlation is so strong. But it's also important to understand that it is just a theory, that it is just a story, that in the entire history of observable phenomena, as we bring in new observing and measuring devices, be that a microscope that revealed germ phenomena, did the microscope create germ phenomena or did it reveal germ phenomena? That we used to think of the four elements, earth, air, fire, and water. And now we have a 32 element table that we say, no, there's these 32 things. But that's not really the end of the story. That's just a useful story at this time. As we bring in new observing and measuring devices, a spectrometer, a nuclear radiation a Geiger counter, anything that we can create through which we can observe and measure, through which we can observe and measure through our observing and measuring devices, the five senses, as well as memory and the mind. We can get a sense of that this exists and that this leads to that. But really what science is a correlation between certain physical phenomena and other physical phenomena through the lens of language and through the lens of the current observing and measuring devices available to us. The why is out of that narrative. The how is somewhat told in that story, that this blood produces pressure that moves back into the valve that is the heart that connects with blood pressure, and that if I want my hand to move, the heart has to provide more pressure. But it's also true that this produces pressure that goes back to the heart through contracting and moving blood flow. So there's a partnership involved. But why it all happens? That is a mystery that is more for the mythological dimension of reality, which are the drives, the emotional landscape produces the why. And if you look at the emotional landscape as a color wheel of drive, of motivation, with the underlying drive being to feel sustainably better and to avoid feeling chronically worse, then we can break human feeling, human emotion, into 7 primary emotions, like the 7 primary colors. We can break them into 200 different emotions, different shades of greens, as in a paint shop. We can break them into 256 million different colors, as in the best our computer chips are currently doing to dissect and create color at different hues, opacities, and intensities in Photoshop. We can create 256 million colors. But the why is the mixing of those colors. When you mix blue and yellow, you get greens. When you mix helplessness and hurt and a thought of betrayal, you get hate. When you have pain, helplessness, hurt, and the idea of betrayal, you get hate. You can create an ecosphere of all of the possible states imaginable. And it's not limited to 256 million, but the human brain cannot keep 256 million different words in memory. And so it's not a useful presentation of color. But the why is this innate drive in every human being to use these phenomena, these stories, these correlations perceived through language, to react to, respond with, and engage with, so as to alter reality by altering our relationship with reality, with these phenomena, so as to sustainably increase well-being and avoid increasing chronic suffering.